League to beat Donald Trump is beat him at the ballot box. Beat him at the ballot box by getting 1,237 delegates. That's what we are fighting to do.
Michigan's a big state. When we focus, we tend to do pretty darn well.
It's a quest to make America great again and make America smart again and make it so that Michigan doesn't lose its car industry and that other states don't lose their industries, whatever they may be.
If you haven't voted already, go vote. The polls are open now. Go vote so you can spend the next 6 days getting other people to vote.
Well, some of the sights and sounds from the campaign trail on this big election night. Let's bring in our panel. Here in New York, Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Juan Williams, columnist with The Hill. Dana Perino, co-host of The Five. And in Washington, syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Steve, you look at these exit polls. What do you see?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting looking at the exit polls for a number of reasons. One of the things that jumped out at me early is Ted Cruz. One of the questions about Ted Cruz's candidacy going forward is whether he could increase his appeal. He does very well with very conservative voters. He does well with evangelical voters. How does he do among somewhat conservative voters as the field narrows? Well, judging from Michigan and Mississippi, these two states today, he does better as the field narrows. He was at 26% in Mississippi and 23% in Michigan. And that's an improvement over virtually every other state that Cruz has competed in, and I think if you're running the Cruz campaign, you take heart in those. The other interesting thing I saw from these exit polls was this head-to-head. You've had both Donald Trump and Ted Cruz say, we'd like to have a head-to-head, mano-a-mano. They did an exit poll on that. Trump beat Cruz head-to-head in Mississippi, 51-42. In Michigan, Cruz beat Trump 43-40. So interesting if it gets to a head-to-head.
Yeah. Juan.
Wow, I think the big story is what's going on with Marco Rubio. I just don't see any indication in all these polls that people are reacting well to him. We know he did well in Virginia last time, coming in very close. But this time, the argument that, you know what, Trump is a con artist, and Trump University is evidence of that kind of con, and that he's not to be trusted as a conservative, does not seem to be working at all in Michigan. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton doing, I think, very well. And the interesting thing I noted in the polling was very well with white women. Surprisingly well.
Charles, in D.C., you know, we'll have actual votes tonight, which is always the best thing. But as you look to another poll, the Wall Street Journal NBC just came out nationally tonight, and its newest poll, and it on the Republican side has it actually pretty close. Trump at 30, Cruz 27, Kasich 22, and Rubio at 20. And then the head-to-head, Cruz versus Trump, Kasich versus Trump, Rubio versus Trump, all three of them there against Trump do better according to this latest poll. But I tell you, we'll see what the real numbers are tonight when we get actual votes.
Well, if you combine the results of the poll with some of the exit poll results, you get the idea that Trump has slid back somewhat, at least as we saw in the poll. And you get this very interesting result, which we also saw a few days ago on Saturday, which is that the very late deciders, the ones who've decided since, say, Saturday or Sunday, go not to Trump. It's almost, in Michigan, it's almost 2-to-1 to Cruz. The problem for Cruz and the others is that an overwhelming majority have already decided. Either they have cast early ballots, as happened in some of the states on Saturday, or they decided early on and they were not going to be changed. And that's about in the 60 to 70% range. So there is this storyline. Yes, Trump has perhaps been damaged somewhat by the late revelations. But on the other side is the fact that his constituency that has decided early is so loyal that it is going to remain unshakable. And it could be that the two influences cancel each other out, and he stays where he was, riding high as he was for the last month or two.
Dana.
Well, I think that looking at the exit polls and comparing them to the ones we've seen in all the states so far, two things remain the same and one thing is different that come to my mind. The first thing is that if you look at dissatisfied voters, voters dissatisfied with Washington or even angry with Washington, that number remains the same in Michigan and Mississippi. Immigration. still number 4 out of 4 issues as the 4th most important to voters. But what's different is that Donald Trump, for the first time, as I recall, is winning in the category of can win in November. Up to now, he has not. That has usually gone to either Cruz or Rubio. And today, I think, at least so far, what we know is that he might have been able to change that dynamic.
You know, what's interesting, Juan mentioned, Steve, the Rubio story and what's happening here and how he sets up for Florida. Here is Rush Limbaugh on Ted Cruz's strategy inside Florida.
Ted Cruz is opening 10 campaign offices in Florida this week. Ted Cruz knows he can't win Florida, but it's obviously designed to take votes away from little Marco. This is not a Cruz dirty trick. This is payback. Rubio opened a bunch of offices in Texas to try to stop Cruz. It's not dirty tricks. It's politics.
So what about that? I mean, because, you know, in order to get to a contested convention, which is the way that these guys get to the nomination, right, they have to stop Trump from having big wins.
They have to stop Trump, but I think in the event of a contested convention, Ted Cruz would rather see Marco Rubio gone. He doesn't want him to be part of any conversation in the event of a contested convention.
So they've done the math, you think, that with Trump getting the 99 Florida delegates, that he can still be stopped from to 1237?
That they can stop him, or that at least Cruz can get to more delegates at the beginning of the convention than Trump does. I think that's the play here. I mean, it's interesting. You've got these changes in strategy in a way. I think Trump is trying to get to 1237. I think Cruz is trying to get to more delegates going into the convention than Trump has. I think Rubio is solely focused on Florida, trying to save his candidacy there. And I think Kasich is trying to accumulate enough delegates to allow him to become the kingmaker in Cleveland, in his home state, this summer. I think Kasich actually, even if he were to lose Ohio, if Rubio didn't win Florida and if Kasich were to lose Ohio, he has very little incentive to get out, because he can accumulate the delegates from the moderate and somewhat conservative voters going forward on terrain that's very friendly to the arguments he's making and be the kingmaker in Ohio.
But just to be clear for everybody at home, you have to get to 1237, and they have to stop Trump from getting there. Otherwise, it's a done deal. Quickly on Kasich, Juan, if he doesn't have a great night tonight, either doesn't win or even come in second, does that hurt him on his way to Ohio?
Well, what he says is he'd like to have a strong showing, especially in Michigan, with the idea being that he is on home turf in that upper Midwest region extending to Ohio, and that will give him momentum to do exactly what Steve just described, be a kingmaker at the convention. If he doesn't, I don't think he legitimately thinks he's going to be the nominee.